It's Tuesday, February 7th, and there were motions by Councilor Laurie, second by Kennedy. Request the city manager contact proper department about parking restrictions in and around 600 Central Street and 2628 Lawrence Street, and an ordinance restricting parking in front of the dwelling houses, and an ordinance for fees and reserved dwelling parking spaces. On the committee, to my Marty Laurie, I'm chairman. I will. And with Kennedy and Councilman Donka. Call the roll.
Chairman Laurie.
Here.
Councilman Donta.
Here.
Councilor Kennedy.
Here.
3 present.
Thank you very much. And in attendance tonight, there's Assistant to the City Manager, Henry Marchand, I'm sorry. Adam Backey, Kendra Emerald, and Eric, is it Engel? EB, there we go, I'm sorry. If there's no, I'd like to start with 600 Central Street, 2628 Lawrence Street. We'll go with 600 Central Street first. I know you've designed a plan in that area.
Yes, I've took a look out at the Hosford Square area where the 600 Central Street is, and I talked to each of the business owners in the square, and each one of them would like to see the 15-minute parking changed to either a 1-hour or a 2-hour parking plan. This is consistent with a lot of hair salons need the extra time for their customers. The variety of businesses all want the longer times. So what I proposed is to change the 16 spaces that are marked for 15 minutes, change 4 of them to 1 hour, and the remaining 12 to 2-hour spaces. And there's also 1 15-minute space on Central Street near an insurance agent up the street, and include that as a 1-hour space as well.
Okay. Any questions,
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy?
I just have one question. Why wouldn't you just make all of them 2 hours then? Are they all in the same location?
Yes, they're all together, but there were a couple of businesses that wanted to see a 1 hour. They wanted to have an ability to get their customers have a space to park, better turnover of parking spaces out there. Because what often happens is when they're 2-hour limits, they still need enforcement to make it 2 hours. Otherwise, the 2 hour stretches out 3 to 4 hours, and they really wanted to see some turnover for the spaces in front of their business.
Do you think it will be confusing for people if some of them are for 1 hour and some are for 2 hours? And the second question would be, do you think it would make that much of a difference if they were just all 2 hours?
It could be, I think there will be some turnover. It's more self-enforcing when people see the signs out there for 1 hour, for 2 hour. They could be able to park over in the 2-hour spaces if they need more time. And, we're trying to accommodate the needs of each business owner out there.
Mm-hmm. So you think it's better to do 1 hour, have the 1 hours and the 2 hours, to have
Yes,
2 different times?
because we can keep the 4-hour spaces in one section, and then the rest of it will be the 2 hours.
Okay.
So it's not piecemeal here and there. It's section of 1 hour and a section of 2 hour.
Okay.
No other questions? Anyone from the public want to speak for? Anyone want to speak against? Okay, part of the hearing's closed.
Well, I'll move we recommend the change to the full council, as recommended by
Second.
the transportation engineer.
We have a motion to move it to the full council with a second. Roll call?
Chairman
Yes.
Laurie.
Yes.
Councilor Madonta.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Next on the agenda is 26 and 28 Lawrence Street. I had made a motion. The individuals that own the home or rent the homes, they have the parking signs for residents only. From December 1st, I believe, until April or so, you can't park after 5 o'clock at night. And is there any suggestions for change? Any, Joe? Councilor Kennedy, any questions?
No.
Yes, on Lawrence Street in that section, it's near the intersection of Church Street. And there is on-street parking, and it's unlimited with no time restrictions, except for the wintertime December 1st to March 31st, when no overnight parking is allowed between the hours of 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. So they can still park there after 5 o'clock at night. They can park up until 2 o'clock in the morning. It's just those 4 hours between 2 and 6 they can't park overnight in the wintertime.
Okay, the problem is the people who live there want to park in front of their homes. There's parking for 20 hours of the day, and from 2 to 6 is there anything we can do to remedy that?
Yeah. There is, the Lower Locks parking garage is within 1,000 feet of this area. That's available to every people overnight. There's the Central Plaza across the street. I don't know if it's possible to work out a permit or, some situation agreement with them or the AutoZone next door.
That lot actually has signs, it's private parking. The lot itself is probably 100 or so yards away, and the concern was having a resident walking at 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, from the parking garage, from there to their home. What they were hoping to do is remedy it so they could at least park there in front of their home at night.
That situation, the reason for the no parking overnight in the wintertime is because it's a snow emergency route. It's one of the primary, emergency response routes in the city. And the idea is to keep that route open in case there is snow overnight. So that, and get the people off the street rather than having to try to get people out there at a few hours' notice to move their car. It's one of those primary routes in the city that we need to keep open.
I'm looking, the individual who spoke at the meeting isn't here tonight. One of the concerns is during a snow emergency, you gotta have your car off the road anyway. So they would be off the road in a snow emergency. What they were looking for was relief from the ordinance under normal conditions.
Yeah.
May I weigh in for just a moment on this? I think this gets at a really a larger question than that particular location. And I think it's the question as to whether the current system of designating snow emergency routes is the appropriate system in the city. It certainly dates to a time when it was more difficult to predict when snowfall was going to come. There is no question that both the DPW commissioner and the police department prefer the status quo to eliminating it and relying solely on the declared snow emergency parking bans, because it is more difficult to ensure that those areas are clear and ready for plowing in the event that you need to clear them for an emergency. But it may be possible for the city to explore some form of changes to that system citywide, given the better ability to forecast snowstorms than was certainly the case at the time whenever this went into effect. But I would caution us on not taking action too quickly on that. I think it's something that I know Eric is looking into a bit. He and I have talked about it, but I'm not sure we're prepared at this point to really lay out all of the pros and cons associated with that. But if it's the will of the council or the subcommittee, we can certainly spend a little more time looking into that. And I think in the short term, with respect to this particular property, we would certainly encourage those property owners or tenants, whoever they may be, to actually reach out to the owners of some of the commercial properties in the area that are not utilizing their parking during the overnight hours, to see if for the next couple of months on a short-term basis they can park in those locations until we can work out a more appropriate solution. I think it would be a potentially challenging precedent to identify only this one snow emergency route for some changes and not be thinking more comprehensively about how it works across the city.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just, who should I ask? Who's the guy that is in charge of towing? Who does that? Is that you?
No, the towing would be handled through the police department.
Well, let me ask you this. What you're saying then is because that's a main artery, there's no parking there during the winter time, period?
Between the hours of 2 a.m. and 6 a.m.
Okay. But if it doesn't snow, for instance, this evening, if you were to park there, you're not going to get towed, right?
Well, I wouldn't want to guarantee that. I mean, it would be an illegal act under the current ordinance to park there tonight. I do understand that in the past, enforcement has not been entirely consistent or aggressive of that particular ordinance because of situations like tonight where we're not really expecting any snow.
Right.
But there is always the potential, if you violate any ordinance, that, whatever the repercussions associated with that ordinance may apply.
I understand that, but I mean, just from a practical matter, if it's not snowing and you know it's not snowing, I mean, I guess it would leave the person living there with the decision that if they were gonna park their car there, they better be real sure that it doesn't snow. And if it does snow, then they're at risk for being towed. But I wouldn't, I would hope we weren't towing cars when there's no snow, because I don't see any point to that other than just to raise revenue.
Well, again, that's something that really, as the planning department, can't really speak to what our policies are
Right.
with respect to traffic
I
enforcement.
know,
That's the
but you
police
jumped
department.
in, so I figured I'd ask you, Adam.
Okay, fair enough.
Any other questions? Anyone to speak in behalf of the motion? Anyone? Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if anybody suggested this, because I wasn't in the room. I was speaking with the mayor in his office, but I'm wondering, in this particular issue, and it's tough to be living on a main thoroughfare where you have restrictions in the winter, and being such a mild winter, it was like a wasted time for the residents all through the city on the main roads that live on the main streets. So I'm wondering if anybody suggested an odd and even ordinance so that they could park on an even, if it's an even-numbered day, they could park on one or the other side of the street. Therefore, they wouldn't be held liable if there was a snowstorm. They could then, the plow would go close to the other side that isn't occupied, and the people could put their car there the next day. You know what I'm saying? And it would be a way to alleviate some sort of a problem.
Absolutely, thank you.
I can just say that one of the things that Eric is looking into is that possibility. I think he's been researching what other communities do with this problem and what changes they've made recently, and also what the effects of those changes have been. And the communities that he's talking to really range from, I think at one extreme you have Brookline, who prohibits all on-street overnight parking year-round in the entire city on all streets. And at the other end, probably the other extreme, you have the city of Concord, New Hampshire, that has actually completely eliminated their snow emergency route parking restrictions fully. And other communities have tried odd even. And we're looking at really trying to get an understanding of what's working and what are some of the challenges under all these scenarios, so that we can give you, again, a more informed response to this, which we're not really prepared at this point to weigh in and say something will definitively work or won't.
Okay, thank you.
I also have another
Councilor Mercer.
comment on this. Many years ago, living in a very dense neighborhood of the Lower Highlands on Royal Street, the city knew that there'd be a snowstorm, and offered free parking at the closest garage to us, which was convenient for us. And that would be at the Doubletree lot over there. Now, having said that, I think the city does offer residents to get their cars off the street, but I think the garage that they offer is the AOT garage. And I don't know how all the garages set with allowing the public to park there during the snowstorm, because I don't think it's right to just offer that one when that's not helping people in the Lower Highlands. It probably might help people in Centerville, but it's not helping everybody with just one like that open. So could we take a look and see if we could leave all the garages open to park and to get your car off the road during a snowstorm? Because the ban is lifted, they have to get the car out of there anyway. So can we offer more garages then, instead of just one or two? It's not fair enough to the city, I think.
Councilor Kennedy?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I asked about that a while ago. I think I asked somebody in the city manager's office, and I was told there were 2 garages that were available. But I think you're right. I think it should be available at every garage. I know they do that in Waltham, and anybody can just park in any garage during a snow emergency, and the idea is to get the cars off the road. And for some people, it involves a long walk, but I think it's pretty successful down there, and I think that in Lowell, we should be offering it at more than just 2 locations. I mean, in some instances, some people could be driving by a couple of garages to get to the AOD or whatever the other garage is that's
Right,
involved.
that's right.
We actually checked in with the parking department in advance of the meeting to get an understanding of why their policy is what it is, and what they explained to us that has actually changed in recent years in Lowell with the policy, and generally it's a good thing, and that is that they actually have paying customers who are actually utilizing the other garages essentially to full capacity, so they actually don't have the capacity in the other garages, other than the AOT garage, and under some circumstances, the early garage, to allow it. If they were to allow to open the gates to all who are impacted by snow emergency parking bans, it would have the effect of shifting people who are currently paying to utilize some of the other garages to a more remote garage. What they have found, they do recognize that it is an inconvenience to some, but they have also found that there is ample supply in the AOT garage, and the demand during the snow emergencies doesn't equal even the amount of space they have available in the AOT, so they don't feel in sort of weighing the various priorities of who is impacted adversely, they don't feel there's a justification to impact the people who are paying to be in the other garages. That's certainly something, though, that if it's the will of the council, I'm sure we can talk with the parking department about exploring that further.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion on this? On
Wait, a motion on.
20.
Since there's no recommendation at this point on what to do about this, I'd just like to continue it to a future subcommittee meeting until such a time as we can get a report on what could be possible.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilor Mendonça to send it back to the Traffic Department until we come back, and it's a second by Councilor Kennedy. Roll call, please.
Chairman Laurie,
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy,
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça.
Yes?
At this point, I'd like to say there's 3 more councilors Councilor Elliott, Councilor Noon, and Councilor Mercia. Thank you. Those two issues in the public hearing are now over. Now we're going to take the third item, which is restricting the parking signs in front of any dwelling and house. And any questions here from any of the councilors?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, my recollection from when this motion was before the full council, before it came to the subcommittee, and part of the reason why it was referred to the subcommittee is because there were residents on Christian Hill that were unhappy with the parking ordinance as it existed. And what I think is that there are probably areas in the city that should be exempt from the ordinance. That is, areas of the city that don't have the density to require that there be a parking restrictions or a parking ordinance at any time. And so what I'd like to do, although if there's anybody to speak on it, then I suppose we should hear them, but what I'd like to do is refer this part of this matter back to the Division of Planning and Development and ask them to take a look at the city map and see if they can identify areas where the parking ordinance isn't necessary.
Thank you.
So would be a motion.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor by Councilor Kennedy to send this back to the Department of Planning and Development and Traffic to look in, to see if there's parts of the city that actually needs the restrictions.
I'll second it for discussion to move the item along, if I may comment.
Sure.
I mean, I know that one of the things we have to be careful with is enforcement. And in order to be enforceable, we need to apply to all our residents relatively equally. And if we start to exempt certain parts of the city and not others, we're going to wind up in a situation where we can't enforce it because it's not applied equally. And that's the part that concerns me when you start to exempt sections of the city from the ordinance. It was originally applied to all, so they'll be easily enforced. That's my concern.
Mr. Chairman.
I also have a concern. I don't know if anyone really knows how many parking signs are out there. My guess there's several thousand. It's also my guess this has been for about 20 years now. And I don't know how fair it is to change the ordinance overnight on people who have the signs. I also thought about going neighborhood by neighborhood as we do the managers and initiative. Traffic engineer Eric Eby, well, I was down to the St. Anthony's a couple of weeks ago for the neighborhood meeting, and you've redesigned basically the whole neighborhood for parking, traffic, and it was just an outstanding job. And I'm wondering if we don't move in those areas, we keep things as they are and go neighborhood to neighborhood to neighborhood. And I'm thinking back, as I said to that night when I saw your proposals on Back Central. Tonight, we had a situation on Central Street. You came back with clearly just a great idea that I think is going to make everyone happy on Back Central businesses and residents. So that's probably the one concern I have, is the several thousand signs out there. How do we take away something that's become part of someone's life out there? There are elderly people who want the signs in front of their house that may have a driveway that holds 2 cars. They may have 3 cars in the family. Those are my concerns. But we do have a motion on to send this back to the DPD and traffic to take a look at by neighborhood.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilor
When you're
Kennedy.
done. I start off with the idea that anybody can park on any street in the city. The streets they're public streets, the parking is all public, and you can park on just about any street. Now, at some point, because there was high density, or density in certain neighborhoods got denser, and also because people seem to have more cars than they did a long time ago, parking restrictions and the parking ordinance was required. And it is required in certain neighborhoods where you have high density. But there are other areas in the city, I believe, where nobody would miss it at all. And in those areas, you don't need the signs, you don't need any restrictions, there's plenty of parking. And there are several neighborhoods like that come to mind. The only thing that I'm asking is that the Division of Planning and Development take a look at the map and see if they can identify those areas. If they were to come back to the subcommittee and say, you know what, we looked at it, but it's just not, there's no place where there shouldn't be a parking restriction, well then, then that's one thing. But I think that it's at least worth taking a look at. My recollection on the night that we had the public hearing was that the people that came down to speak on it from Christian Hill, what they were upset about was that there was a parking restriction in their neighborhood and they didn't feel that they need one. And I can think of several other neighborhoods where one is probably not needed as all either. So it isn't like you're taking anything away from anybody, because anybody can park on any street because all of the streets are public parking.
Thank you.
If I may, we would certainly be happy to, take a more comprehensive look at things, and I think it's not hard to identify, I'm sure everyone here has some idea of the portions of the city where parking is more at a premium than other locations of the city. However, I think that the concern that will arise is no matter what areas are potentially identified, I'm sure we would also find that there are some of these placards in existence in those locations. I can even think on my own street, which is one where there's not a parking problem, but there are a couple of people who have chosen to get those placards, and for whatever reason they felt that they were important to them. I imagine if it were to be determined that that was a location that we should not, that is not necessarily, that this is not necessary, if that were determined without the participation of all of the impacted property owners, at least those individuals would likely be disappointed by that. What I would recommend as perhaps a better alternative to address, I think, the very same concern might be that we open the door to groups of residents in a neighborhood who are interested in collectively determining that the majority, the supermajority, whatever the appropriate amount is, of the potentially impacted property owners essentially volunteer to withdraw themselves from this particular ordinance and make that available across the city equally to everyone, whether you're in the Lower Highlands or Christian Hill or Pawtuckaville or wherever. And if a group comes forward and says, you know, we don't want to be part of this, and here is the signatures of 2/3 of the property owners in the potentially impacted area saying they agree with that, then that I think would be an appropriate area to say, clearly the parking restrictions are not needed here. And it could be done in a manner, I think at that point, where we would have the sense that that really is the will of the impacted parties, rather than it be necessarily being something that is imposed on the impacted parties. But I will obviously defer again to the will of the subcommittee and the council.
Roll call on the motion.
Councilor Elliott.
Thank you. I'm going to support the motion. I personally think that, and I agree with Councilor Kennedy, some sections of the city don't need this, don't require it, certainly does not warrant it. My neighborhood is a good example. And they are public streets, they're public thoroughfares. No, the problem is there are some sections of the city that very much do need this. And unfortunately, something that was put in place to alleviate parking problems and traffic problems has been abused by some. So I do think it's incumbent upon us to do something. And I don't think there's going to be, one shoe fits all. I think it is going to have to be neighborhood by neighborhood because each neighborhood has their own set of needs, their own set of, geographic challenges. So I think that we should look at, some neighborhoods, again, just don't need it. And I don't know if they're going to be upset or they're not going to be upset, but, I think we have to move forward with something. What we do know, as long as I've been there, this problem's not getting any better. It's getting worse. There are more placards. Quite frankly, there's more vehicles. So I'm going to support the motion, but I was also thinking as I was listening, we don't know how many placards are out there, but somebody has to have a record of what's out there, so it might be a good starting point. I'm going to presume if we look at the permits and if you look at the data, that it's going to show trends in certain neighborhoods, almost to some degree by geographic boundaries, street by street. Where are the majority, where is the greatest density of these parking placards? We all certainly know there's going to be a concentration in back central, Lower Highlands, Lower Centerville, and those particular areas, and the outlying areas, Belvedere, out where I am in Pawtuckaville. I don't think we're going to find very many applications. But I do support that motion because I do think that we have to do something. And what is the solution? It's tough, and I'm sure planning, development, the traffic, they've been, racking their heads trying to figure out what is something that's going to apply, that's going to be fair as well. So, long-standing issue, and might make some sense to, look at this multifaceted approach to try to solve it to some degree. And I don't, some people are going to be happy and some people are going to be unhappy. I remember when Back Central came in, it was almost like a 50-50 when that issue came before us. And, it was really frustrating to try to put something in place. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Elliott. And you made some great points. If memory serves me correct, and I wasn't on the council, I think this originally was your motion? Yeah. Much of what you said is true, and one concern I have, and that's why what I'd like to do is, my opinion is to keep things in place. If it's not broke, don't fix it until we go neighborhood through neighborhood. I don't want to put a stop, my opinion is I don't want to put a stop to the no parking signs as we go neighborhood to neighborhood. Especially in some neighborhoods, you have a lot of one-way streets, and it's been unfair to people who can't park on one side when their neighbors are taking out signs on the other, no parking in front of my house. So you may have 30 houses on one street, 15 and 15. You can't park on the left side, but on the right side, the people who own the homes are putting out signs, which really alleviates the people on the left. So that's why I concur, but I think neighborhood by neighborhood, as I said. And I looked at the back Central Street area, which was just done by the traffic division, and the plan was outstanding, and I'd like to point that out. In my opinion, it was outstanding.
You gonna take speakers on this?
Vote first, and we take speakers? Yeah, I thought so. We're going to open the public hearing now to speakers. Anyone who'd like to speak in favor? Please state your name and address.
My name's Bill Daly. I live on Floyd Street in Lowell. I like to vote in favor of this amendment, but a lot of things you brought out are, very true. As you know, Floyd Street, one-way street, and people have all these placards out there. People want to entertain on the weekends. They take up the spots. Where are you supposed to park? And I haven't heard the new proposals for, Back Central Street, but, I think we should have, like it was suggested, the stickers for the people on, just residents only parking. Get a sticker, one per household. Would make it fair to everybody. At least everyone would have a shot. I mean, some of the places around there, they have 97 cars in one house. They come in on commercial vehicles. Where are you supposed to park? And I'm in favor of, you can probably go neighborhood by neighborhood and probably straighten that out. But like I said, something should be done about, like you say, the parking on both, one side of the street. You're a taxpayer, and there's no place to park on your street. That's not fair to the people who live on the opposite side. And I think, because Back Central did years ago, have the stickers for the residents. And if you did, one sticker for a household, that's fair to everybody. Some of them might not, like first come, first serve, or, some might have to move. But for one whole side not have any parking on the street, that's totally wrong. And like you're saying about the all these no parking, I think what you should do, who's ever in charge of the parking, the legal ones, fine, but all the ones you buy at, Home Depot or something, go out and have whoever issues the city signs and give them a warning, take them down first time, and second time, you give them a ticket like you do for the waste management. They're illegal, don't put them up, and have it enforced. They can go around, get a warning. Another suggestion, I don't know if people watch this much, but I was out walking the dog the other day and I counted 15 New Hampshire plates in the neighborhood. Division in planning, whoever does it, jot down this number, put a sticker on it, and turn it into the police, and every time they go by, put another one on. They're there the 30 days, or whatever it is. They should be getting fined. They're taking up parking spots, and they're here illegally anyways. Something should be done about all these New Hampshire plates that are in the city. Like I said, take a walk around the neighborhood. I'm not lying. You count 2 or 3 dozen New Hampshire plates, nothing's done about it, not a thing. And they take, like I said, it's so tight, the parking in that neighborhood. We need help, and we need some kind of enforcement. And I appreciate all the help you can do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wish to speak? Could you state your name and address, please?
Good evening, everybody. My name's Marie Brown. I live at 380 Christian Street in Lowell. Everything I'm hearing tonight is so music to my ears. It makes a lot of sense. It is a neighborhood by neighborhood issue. I don't know if anybody really has a handle on, like you said, what's out there and what isn't and where is it. Needs to be addressed. And you're absolutely right. This is many people's become a way of life for the need for the parking, which is definitely a need in most places. But the neighborhoods that don't need it, instead of having neighbors going to each other, it's pitting neighbors against each other. And then you don't have a neighborhood anymore. That was our biggest concern up on the hill. That was the concern. And it sounds like people are getting it. And I understand that this is going to be, it's going to be it has to be a collaborative effort. You have to have the Division of Planning and Development in on it, you have to have traffic in on it, you have to have the police in on it, people in City Hall. And I was sitting here just thinking about it, and some of your densest areas are around the university. What about a little bit of collaboration with their police force to take care of their own backyard, along with the Lowell police? That might be an avenue to investigate. But one other thing I just want to say, I just recently heard about the new development that was okayed, I guess, if you will, over where St. Peter's used to be. It's going to be 50 units. It's 100 bedrooms in these 50 units, and there's 26 parking spaces. Are we shooting ourselves in the foot or what? How can we allow 50 units with 26 spaces? And I guess the train of thought was, this is low-income housing, so people aren't going to have cars. I don't know. And I know that's not the issue here tonight, and we're going to save it for another day. But I don't know how you can allow that when we're standing here trying to straighten out the mess that's been going on for the last 30 years. Even if somebody doesn't have a car, somebody's going to come and get them to take them shopping or to the doctor or to visit or something. When we were driving around, just seeing what was out there, we went on we were on a street, 15 Alton Street, Lower Belvedere, beautiful new facility, condos. Do you know what it said outside the front of those condos? Reserved parking for visitors. The city street. It's big signs.
I'm sorry, was that a city sign or a private sign?
I'm not, it didn't say, it was private.
We're not talking about that
Okay.
tonight. We're
All
talking.
right, okay.
And the reason why I
Sorry.
say that, I used to be the mailman there, and I do know the signs were there, and I used to park my truck there, but as far as I know, those signs aren't enforceable.
But see,
And-
to an honest, law-abiding citizen, I wouldn't park there.
Now,
So
the-
maybe that's some of the confusion too.
They're not city signs unless you're blocking the driveway going in.
Right.
I don't think they're enforceable. I'm not a police officer,
Okay.
but those are private signs.
Still confusing. Anyway, thank you. Everything that's been said here tonight I'm pleased. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak?
My name is Lucille Richards. I live at 114 Billing Street. I am the president of the Centerville Neighborhood Group. The parking sign ordinance was designed to help residents in congested areas, neighborhoods, so that they would be assured that they would have at least one spot in front of their house that they could park their cars. The spirit of the ordinance, however, has kind of morphed into an unneighborly, no parking in front of my house mentality. Residents who live in certain neighborhoods, parts of Centerville, parts of Pawtucketville with the university, Lower Highlands, do benefit from this ordinance, but not everyone in Lowell perhaps needs a placard in front of their house to ensure a parking space. So we appreciate the fact that the ordinance is being reviewed and tweaked, and enforcement will be the key to success, like with any other ordinance in the city. Anne Marie Page wrote a letter. If you don't mind, I will read it. She wrote, like most programs, when this reserved dwelling sign program was initiated, it was to help out people in very congested areas and to be able to have at least one parking spot in front of their home. Like most programs, it was not enforced, and then it got way out of hand. If you purchase a house in Lowell in a congested neighborhood and have no parking driveway, yes, you should be allowed to have a reserved dwelling sign. But if you own a home and it has a driveway, you should not be allowed to purchase one of those signs for your property. The fee should be reviewed every year, and you should have a sticker just like on your car. This would assist in the enforcement. It should not be a $10 fee once, and it should be a $10 fee once, and that is good for the next 100 years. So basically, she wants the fees reviewed every year. In our neighborhood, some have driveways and some do not. We try to respect each other's needs. If we are having a family get-together or a party, to tell each other, so we can all help out with parking that is good for the neighbors to do. When the police see an unauthorized sign, such as those purchased in a hardware store, or a fence showing no parking on a city street, that homeowner needs to receive a citation. The only signs we should be looking at are those that are truly necessary and issued by the city of Lowell with a date sticker. Let's get this program to do only what it is meant to do, help out the congested neighborhoods, and not to be an excuse to be an unfriendly neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wanting to speak? We have about 5 minutes left, really. We have to.
Hi, my name is Heidi Miller. I live at 124 Beacon Street. I want to thank you all for revisiting this. From the very beginning, I really just wanted to have our neighborhood, as well as 140 neighbors, to be opted out. I feel that when you are not in a congested area and a neighbor puts up one of these placards, it's discriminating, and I feel it's unnecessary. So I just want to thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Councilor Kennedy, Councilor Mendonça?
Just quickly, just to let everybody know, there are two different types of residential parking. There's one that's residential parking only, that exists only in some areas of the city, most notably around the university where there's a lot of students. And that doesn't allow anyone to park except residents. This is a different program we're discussing right now, which is reserved residential parking, where the resident gets one parking in front of their property if they choose to use it. And one of the changes we had made was to make it renewable annually. Now, when I saw that, I thought that might be a solution to the problem, in that someone who doesn't need it is not going to take on an annual cost of continuing to renew it. So I had initially hoped that that would address some of the concerns, and that we would at least try that and see if the fee was such that people who didn't really need it wouldn't renew it and wouldn't be taking up space that could be used by others. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mendonça. We do have a motion by Councilor Kennedy to revisit, have the DPD and the parking department restrict parking by neighborhoods.
Just to take a look at the whole.
Just to take a look at the whole city and see where we can restrict parking in certain neighborhoods. Roll call, please.
Chairman Laurie,
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy,
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça.
Yes.
Thank you very much. That will conclude the meeting. Before we leave, I'd just like to say, I'd like to ask Adam Backey, maybe a timetable. This situation's been going on for 20 years, and we're not going to resolve this overnight.
I can guarantee it won't take another 20 years, though.
No, but I don't want to tie your hands to a quick decision. What are we looking at for a reasonable amount of time?
I think maybe if we come back about this time next month, that should give us enough time to have
30 days.
some thoughts that we can share with you. I think ultimately there's going to need to be a lot more discussion in this kind of a forum about which approach to actually bring forward, but we'll certainly have a lot more information we can add to the discussion at that point.
That would be great. And what I like is, we're not changing things overnight. People have had the place, the signs, we'll use them. The changes will take place gradually, not overnight, and hopefully we can resolve this situation. So why don't we come back March 20th? Would that be reasonable?
Sure.
Okay, I'd like to recess this subcommittee and come back on the 20th of March. Thank you very much. I want to apologize for anyone who I mispronounced your name.